علي يا علي علي يا علي ادركني يا أبا الحسن يا علي يا علي يا علي يا علي يا علي حبك بدلالي سكان
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Praise be to Allah and blessing upon His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his blessed progeny. Brothers, sisters, respected scholars and elders, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is an honor for us to welcome all of you on behalf of the Afghan Youth Committee, Al-Huda Youth and Mahdiya Youth Group to our very first annual Eid banquet. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maria Al-Janabi. And for those of you who do know me, my name is Maria. Let's just say it's a little bit of an identity crisis. As if being Iraqi Muslim Canadian, Canadian Muslim, Iraqi Canadian wasn't confusing enough.
And my name is Sawita Ishri, just Sawita. And we will be your masters of ceremony for this evening.
So today's theme is cultural pride.
We'd like to begin by extending an Eid Mubarak to all of you on this auspicious occasion, where the Holy Prophet of Islam formally declared Imam Ali alayhi salam as the Caliph of Muslims after him. Eid al-Qadir is celebrated by Muslims all around the world, where we remember the Prophet Muhammad's final instructions to the believers on his return from his last pilgrimage, where is known in history as Hajjatul Wada. This took place on the 18th of Zilhajj, 3 months before his demise.
To celebrate this tonight, we have a fun-filled evening planned for you all, so I try to keep it short. They say it's better to leave your audience before your audience leaves you. We'll start with a beautiful Quran recitation, followed by an intriguing spoken word and trivia. We'll continue with a lecture by Brother Hassanain on cultural pride, followed by a delicious buffet dinner and an entertaining comedian. We will end with a raffle with lots of prizes to give away. If everybody got their raffles as they walked in, there should also be, they would be selling them in the corner as well if you're interested. Outside, in the front entrance, don't forget to take your picture. There will be a professional photographer there, so we don't have to worry about all the girls taking selfies. The program schedule is on your table, and as well as the trivia, and I would really like everybody to talk to one another and fill it out so that you can be part of the draw. Please refrain from using Sheikh Google, and those who paid attention in Sunday school, this is your time to shine. So now I would like to invite Brother Mahmoud Zarabi to recite some verses of the Holy Quran. Salawat.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم وإن تطيعوا الله ورسوله لا يلتكم من أعمالكم شيئا إن الله غفور رحيم. إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم في سبيل الله أولئك هم الصادقون. يمنون عليك أن أسلموا قل لا تمنوا علي إسلامكم بل إن الله يعلم غيب السماوات والأرض والله بصير بما تعملون صدق الله العلي العظيم إجماع صلوات.
Thank you, Brother Mahmoud Zarabi, for the beautiful recitation of Surah Al-Hujurat, discussing the manners of how Muslims should behave. The national, racial distinctions that cause universal corruption in the world have been condemned in this surah. Nation, tribes, and families' pride of ancestry and looking down upon others as inferior to themselves and pulling down others only for the sake of establishing their own superiority is an important factor that has filled the world with injustice and tyranny today. Allah cuts at the root of the evil by stating that all men are descendants from Adam and Eve, and their division into tribes and communities is only for the sake of recognition, not for boasting and pride. And there is no lawful basis of one person's superiority over the other except on the basis of moral excellence. Sorry to inform us all Afghans, we are in fact not better than anyone else. The people are then told to believe in Allah and His Messenger truly, to obey them in practical life.
Our next activity consists of a spoken word poetry by Naseem Asghari. Naseem is a 16-year-old Muslim girl, a thinker, a dreamer, a student, a seeker of truth and justice who happens to write and perform poetry. Naseem was born in Bahrain, Iran, but was raised and living in Toronto as of 2001. Naseem is currently an 11th grade student studying at Richmond Green High School. She has been invited to speak about her poetry at several events and has participated in 2 poetry slams and is starting to compile her own poetry into a published book. Naseem has been writing since the age of 11, having been inspired by scholarly figures and teachers. She decided to use her voice and written words to shed some light on many issues, primarily Islam, which has been misinterpreted by society. She uses her voice and words to speak out against injustice and to express her concerns and opinions about matters she is passionate about. Please help me welcome Naseem for spoken word poetry.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كل نفس ذائقة الموت اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. I greet you all with the beautiful greeting of peace. Friends, teachers, family, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. It's so great being here today, seeing the unity starting to flourish and spread. Inshallah, we can have more events like this in the future, and inshallah with more youth, with other youth groups as well, inshallah. This piece I wrote it's about death, a part of it at least. And I figured Brother Hassanain will be speaking of cultural pride and how we can put our cultural pride aside, or our ego, is by remembering death, the fact that we're going to be gone ultimately one day. So without further ado, and if you have any name suggestions for this piece, please let me know after. I don't know what to name it. day, there is a war inside of me, a revolution being fought, the struggle of breaking bad habits and ignoring ignorant thoughts. Every morning, there is a battle within me. When I begin to question, firstly, my own humanity, I become like a philosopher, asking hundreds of questions, yet knowing I'm not always guaranteed any answers, because unfortunately, throughout my 16-year-old experience, I have come to realize that his story and her story are bound to repeat themselves. Yet every morning, I wake up and ask myself, man, woman, and humankind, for how long will we keep on bickering? For how long will we be living our precious lives with closed eyes, with empty, ignorant thoughts, with thoughtless words, with reckless actions, or with no actions at all? For how long? For how long will we be willing to keep our eyes closed, thinking ignorance is bliss, when in fact it's a malignant disease residing in our hearts, minds, and souls? But tell me, my friend, tell me, do you think there will ever come a time when the people of this world are colorblind? When you are firstly seen as you, not associated with any race, color, or a kind? Tell me, do you think a day will come when the world is united as one? A day when the world is united as one, when egos are buried before people are? Do you think that day will come when the egos are buried before people are? Will there be a time when mankind is no longer boasting of their kind, but have their heads held up with a humble, accepting smile, a time when mankind is always kind? Tell me, will the time come when death is constantly on our minds? Call it morbid, call it scary, call it whatever you want to call it, and yes, after public speaking, death is known to be one of the most feared concepts. Ironic if you ask me, but let me tell you, death is truth, and it's part of life. So live your life knowing it can take a blink of an eye for someone you know and love to turn into someone you knew and used to love. So from death, learn how to live. With each breath, aspire to learn and give. Know that in each tear there is passion waiting to escape your actions. Know that your heart is the home to hidden cures, and your mind is the chest bearing treasures, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be treasured. And while reading the words of God, I see that he repeatedly says, every single soul shall taste death. So I look at myself in the mirror and I say, let me tell you, young 16-year-old who is looking for answers to put together the pieces of humanity and this world, humankind has come a long way, yes. By the grace of God, we have come a long, long way. Yet there's still many miles to travel, because death does not discriminate, yet humankind has yet to learn to not do so. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, we can all benefit from that. I wrote this piece after, a part of it after the death of one of my teachers, and every death is a wake-up call for us to live our lives in a better way and open our eyes to the reality of this world, how short it is, how finite we are, how finite this world is, and just connect, be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and put our pride aside. So if we could all please recite a Surah Al-Fatiha for all the oppressed, all those who are being oppressed, all those who have lost their lives, and all those who are struggling as we speak right now. Fatiha ba'd as-salawat.
Thank you, Sister Naseem. Your poetry never fails to blow me away.
So if I could have everybody seated, before I announce who the winners are for the trivia, we're going to be taking it up as a group, so feel free to participate and engage yourself. Now that you've submitted your answers and you feel like you want to answer, you're not 100% sure, I'll let you use Google. Folks, we have a winner. Table number 28. Where are you, table 28? Far right corner. Please, all of you come up to the front and you will be presented your gift. Can I get a loud salawat for all of them, please? Thank you everyone for your participation. Today, we are pleased and honored to have a distinguished guest amongst us who has kindly accepted our invitation to introduce our keynote speaker and to prepare us for the topic that Brother Hassanain will speak about. Sister Shairoz is familiar and well known in the Islamic community who does lectures, and most of us has heard of at Islamic centers, universities, and interfaith gatherings across Toronto. She is very active on social media and has a massive internet following base on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. She is an internationally renowned speaker and has traveled internationally. She appears every Saturday morning on Ahlul Bayt TV and lectures on Fajr Radio and appears on many other radio, internet channels, and satellite TV channels, speaking in Urdu, English, and Gujarati. She is a mother of 3 children and is married to a family physician and an anti-racist educational counselor by profession. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology and a master's degree in the field of education. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, please join me in inviting Sister Shairoz with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to be here in front of you and to see all of the wonderful people I see in different masjids, different Islamic centers all across the GTA, all under one roof here today. And subhanAllah, I must say that the Al-Mahdi Center and the Afghani youth and Al-Huda Center youth have all done a spectacular, phenomenal job in bringing you all together, and they deserve our loud salawat from Muhammad. MashaAllah, it really is wonderful to see all of you here together. And I know that sometimes when we're in these kinds of fancy surroundings, we get a little bit shy to recite salawat. But the next thing that I'm about to do, and please indulge me, we're doing a little exercise. And that is going to only work if you join me and recite salawat loudly when I ask you to. So I want to just do a little, not a very scientific exercise. And this is also, we can introduce the topic that our brother will be speaking about. And all I want to ask you is to give a salawat when I ask you which group you are representing here today, and you can choose whichever identity you want, because some of us have multiple cultural places we're from. So number 1, let's say, if you are from Iran or from the Persian community, do a loud salawat. Not many Iranis here today, huh? Should we do it again? Oh, okay, maybe the Afghanis are gonna... Let's hear it if you're from the Afghani community. Subhanallah. What about the Lebanese? OMG. Let's hear it if you're from the Koja East African community. One guy with a very loud voice, subhanallah. I know there's some of you out there, but they're very shy, aren't they? Except when you go to their mosque, then they really know how to tell you what to do, right? And then, let me hear from you if you are from the Iraqi community. Wow, am I missing anybody? Let me hear from you if you are from the community of the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Wait a minute, it seems that community has taken over this place. And you've helped me prove a point here. But where does this cultural pride come from? Because we know that one thing that unites us is this, right? That we love the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But where is cultural pride? Because we did recite loud salawat when our communities were mentioned. And I'm from the Khoja one. I should have done my salawat with you. Sorry, brother. The two of us, we're not doing a good service tour. Sorry? The Pakistani community did it? So, where does this cultural pride come from? Well, sociologists say that this is a survival mechanism. The human beings need something to get strong in numbers. It is often to keep the enemy away, to show strength and power and status, to show who's boss. We need to stick together. Psychologists say the human beings have a tendency to seek the familiar, and they need to be with people who like the same kind of food, who kind of look like them, etc., etc. You get the idea. When the Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, he said, sure, you can have all these things, and these are blessings from Allah. These are blessings that you all look different, and you eat different food, and etc., etc. But keep your clothing, no problem, but have the criteria of modesty fulfilled. As long as you fulfill that, you can wear whatever you want, as long as you wear hijab the way Allah wants you to. As well as food, eat anything you want, as long as you stick within the wajibat and you are careful. Keep everything, but when it comes to identity, do not be proud of anything. Don't let these things be dividing factors in your life. For if you must have any identity that is above every identity, it is the identity of the follower of Islam who calls a fellow believer a brother or a sister. Your tribal roots are good, fine and dandy, but in the eyes of Allah, you must come as brothers and sisters. And when we were back home, we Muslims are at a very interesting historical point in our lives. When we were back home, we could be strong and do whatever we did, and we stuck together with our own kind. When we came here, we got scattered all over the West. We made this our new home. But now we've had to literally regroup ourselves so that we can have a voice. Whether it's for lobbying, whether it's for celebrating, for worshiping, whatever it is. And that means that identity the Prophet told us about, of belief, that must bring us together. For we're not here just to survive. We are here to prepare for the Mahdi. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahum. Louder. When I was told that my dear brother Hassanain Rajabali was about to speak today, and I was told that, would you like to invite and introduce him to the podium? I went through a lot of feelings. Number one was extreme pride, cultural pride. Because Brother Hassanain comes from the Khoja community. Let's have a loud salawat for Muhammad. And you know what? He's one of ours. And I take great pride in saying he's one of ours. And he's my brother. He has many, many identities, many feathers in his cap, many hats that he wears. But number one, I can say this is one of ours. And when Brother Hassanain came in, my mother had tears in her eyes because she said, there's the son of our community representing us here today. And that cultural pride was not arrogance, it was deep, deep love that you represent us so well, subhanAllah. And you provide so much for so many communities. The second thing was, when I heard that Hassanain was coming, I was like, oh wow, my God, I'm so proud of him on so many levels. For here is a man who is educated. He went to the University of Colorado, and he has a degree in molecular, I can't even pronounce it, can I? Molecular biology and psychology, and he has come to the West like many of us. In 1975, as a little boy, I won't say how little, but then he grew up here from East Africa, being born in the East, grew up in the West, and grew up in New York. Whoa, mashallah, this is a New Yorker here, New Yorker dude. And subhanallah, what does he do being in New York? He is the principal of the Tawheed Institute and trains the youth and becomes a mentor and teaches people how to recite and how to be a good follower of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, subhanallah. And then, where does life bring him? To Dearborn. And we see that he is the principal and the owner and the director of the only Muslim-owned camp in North America, Camp Taha. And we all go there and we all see each other from different parts of the world. He brings us all together. Who better to speak about this topic of cultural pride than the man who brings people from different cultures together and is so much a part of us that when he's with us, we feel he's one of ours. We forget he's Khoja, we feel he's Afghani. We forget he's Khoja, we feel that he is actually Lebanese. And we forget he's Khoja, we think he's Persian. This man knows how to be one with every person he meets. And he's a great role model for us in that respect. And so I'm proud of him. I'm so honored to say his name and to introduce him and to bring him up to this podium. And I want to also say, not only is he all of that, but he's also a father, a husband, and a very devoted son whose family supports him and is with him by his side literally every time. In fact, it's a rarity to see him alone here, even though he has his brothers of Islam with him. But he is always with his family. So he's a role model for us in every respect. Whether it's in tabligh, whether it's in education, whether it's in bringing people together and teaching Islam, and being a father, a son, and a brother, and a good brother in Islam to all of us in every single way. I am so delighted and honored to invite Brother Hassanain Rajabali to speak in front of us with a loud salawat bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق ونور عرش أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيبنا وسيدنا وسندنا وشفيعنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. I begin in Allah's name, the Beneficent, the Merciful, who tells us in the 49th chapter a universal verse that hopefully will be pertinent to the present gathering, and hopefully we'll try to reflect and bring about something very positive. The 13th verse of Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, O mankind, we have made you into male and female, nations and tribes, so you know each other. لتعارفوا. Indeed, the most honorable to Allah is one who is God conscious, and Allah is all-knowing, all-aware. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very clearly lays the foundation, and I really am honored, first of all, that in light of these kinds of verses that we know, these are the universal verses of Islam, which is what makes Islam the de facto religion of earth, of the universe. It is the true religion because it addresses universal principles. And I'd like to stress very much that nothing is more powerful in the divine religions than the universal principles. Those specialized principles that come specific to a group of people, those come as a result of the foundation of universal principles. And if a religion lacks the universality, then it lacks credence as a religion. So, in light of that universality, it's wonderful to be here among you, and of course to receive this accolade introduction, very unique, Sister Shahroz, thank you so much. I don't deserve this. The fact that various communities from all parts of the world, I think this is an international group, it's not only Iranian, Lebanese, and Afghani, it's Iraqi, Khoja, it's Pakistani, you name it, and in between. I know native Canadians, Americans, Caucasians, doesn't matter. To me, that's the spirit that I resonate for. As a child, I remember I always used to be told, if you're a Khoja, you should service the community. I said, no, I'm a Muslim. I service the Ummah. The Ummah to me is my service. I don't believe in the notion of just being a Khoja. Yes, I have a national background, I agree. And as a sister mentioned very eloquently, it is something that we should be proud of in a positive way, not in an arrogant way. We should hold on to it. Because Quran said, we made you into nations and tribes, okay, into cultures. لِتَعَارَفُوا. لِتَعَارَفُوا means what? Means you recognize yourself, but then don't lose that recognition. But bear in mind that if you're Iranian and you've come to Canada, you're Khariji. Okay? You go back to Iran, you're not an Iranian anymore. You are somebody different because you speak English. You're Tanzanian Khoja, you come to America, you're different. It's interesting, the Khojas originated from India, which then split to Pakistan and India. And now you got the Pakistani Khojas, you got the Indian Khojas, then the East Africans became the East African Khojas. Then within East Africa, you got Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. And then within Tanzania, there was the Zanzibarian and the Dar es Salaam. I mean, how far can we go to segregate each other? And then we hold with pride, oh, I'm a Zanzibarian Khoja. Where are you from? So we become so distinct in our culturalisms. And that's okay, because it's the food we eat. Look, I speak Swahili, which a Pakistani Khoja does not speak. So that differentiates me. But what's the message behind it? Allah said, لِتَعَارَفُوا. You've incorporated a culture that now adds value to who you are. You look at language. Language shares so many common words. How did that all come about? Because there was an inter-exchange between cultures. And there was an intermarriage between cultures, which brought about this healthy levels of languages that we can articulate and express with each other. And I think that's the message that I'd like to impart today. I really want to thank the organizers, the youth, and I'd like to speak about, because I'm a pragmatist, as you know. I don't like doing these kinds of conferences for the sake of doing conferences. I think these gatherings are fantastic, they're extremely essential, but they must translate to something positive and proactive for tomorrow, for us to say it was money well spent. Okay? So I want to first and foremost greet you all with the greetings of Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm honored to be here. As you know, I just came from Texas. I was just busy in Dallas, and then we were moving to Houston, and then I flew here, and I just arrived. And yet, it's wonderful to be among you. It's very high spirit when you see a community that's rich, and I love the Canadian communities. You know, in our camp, 50%, almost 40 to 50% of our population every summer is occupied by Canadian youth and adults, which I think is fantastic. To me, that's a testament of the power of Islam that becomes colorblind, national blind, and brings the core principles while we respect each other's cultures. That you're Iranian, you're Afghani, you're Lebanese, you're Iraqi, you're Pakistani, it doesn't matter. Your culture is sacred, we protect it, we honor it, we love it. And we try to bring varieties, and I think that's where the beauty lies. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is saying, we made you into nations and tribes, male and female first of all. You notice within our society, what brings hell on earth is when we have bigotry from one gender against the other. And I have to admit, historically, our female genders have always received the short end of the stick in society, unfortunately. And I think this is the sickness of humanity when we are myopic in vision, that we have the audacity to consider the very mother that bore us to be of a gender that's inferior to the male. To me, that's absurd. But unfortunately, the consequences still continue. I was just at the airport, and they were talking about how 60 women are now rising against the Kingdom of Saudi occupied Arabia government and telling them that we are now going to start driving a car. Because, you know, for a woman to drive a car in that part of the stolen land is forbidden. So, a classic non-Muslim assumes that Islam is a religion that marginalizes a woman and does not allow her to drive, because the very center of Islam, the root of Islam, is Mecca and Medina, and since there a woman cannot drive, then that must be a divine ordinance. I've spoken in universities where people come and tell me, what you just said is wonderful, but we have a problem with your religion because you don't allow your women to drive. But I don't blame them, for if I was a non-Muslim, I would take the rules from that, for I would certainly take the rules from the Vatican if I was to understand what Christianity is all about. So what do we do as Muslims, living in the West especially, to diffuse these kinds of misinformation, disinformation, such that we become good role models, not only for our communities, but for ourselves, and to eradicate these kinds of schisms that take place between the gender, and the Quran eradicates it in one sentence. إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ. Nations and tribes. You notice nationalism is deadly. The Hitler concept of the Aryan race to be superior over other nations, or the Japanese thinking they're superior to the Chinese, which they went in and they butchered 1 million people in China only because they said the Japanese is a better race, or the race that has stolen the land today claiming that God has given it to them and they don't even rule the land by the laws of God, to see the classic hypocrisy on earth today. And the hell that's created on earth as a result of that. And the occupation that takes place because your skin is a little bit darker and therefore your value and your quality is less than the one who's lighter in skin. And it's funny how when prisoners are traded, that 1,000 prisoners to one of that one. What a subliminal message that 1,000 of you are like one of me. Only because your skin is a little darker or dark. Look at the continent of Africa. No continent has been raped in the history of the human race than the continent of Africa. It continues to be raped today as we speak. It is so much in disarray that were it to come out of that little hole, it gets subdued again, just like Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe did not need to borrow a dime from the IMF. The IMF went in and choked them and poisoned their lands and forced them to borrow money from the IMF so they can never pay them back. This enslavement, this nationalistic economic enslavement is what brings the imbalances in society. It's what brings hell on earth. And often, we tend to turn to God, and Allah, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and ask, oh God, why have you created such a lousy world? A world where there's so much carnage, there's so much killing, so much butchering. Every single day I hear in Iraq, 100 people, 200 people. I mean, just bombs blowing up. In Pakistan, our Shias being shot with impunity, and they're not even being apprehended. These guys are getting away with motorcycles, shooting hundreds of our community members, and getting away with it. Even the government doesn't go after them. Go to Afghanistan and see how many killings take place every day with drones. People are happy, like these kinds of gatherings, having weddings, and suddenly a bomb drops on them, and half the population is annihilated only because the drone decided to land it in that spot. Who are we? Cheap carpet to be walked on? Worthless creatures? When Islam as an empire was over 1,000 years old, that brought about modern sciences today to its place where it is today. We're not claiming that Islam is the only religion, or the Muslims are the only people who brought science forward, but we were large contributors to modern society's successes. Why is it that we're such second and third class citizens? Honestly, I'm a firm believer it all starts within ourselves. I believe the enemy cannot subdue us, nor can they drop a single bomb on us unless we allow them. Either tacit silence or by our own stupidity and foolishness in pointing fingers at each other and causing disunity within ourselves that causes the enemy to divide us and to conquer us. And I think it's extremely fundamental. This is my principle. I live by it because I see nothing in Islam but this. Islam is a uniting agency, that it respects even an atheist. An atheist from Russia, an atheist from China. It doesn't matter where you come from, how you look, what your skin color is. Respect that person. Allah says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikma wal maw'idati al hasana." Invite people to the way of your Lord with wisdom and kind exhortation. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Use sound logic. Don't be condescending and say, oh, you are below me, you're a second-class citizen. Even Islam forbids me when I'm debating or discussing with a Christian, Ahlul Kitabi, to be condescending, to consider them to be inferior to me. It's not allowed. Musa alayhi salam was a prophet of Allah, a messenger, Rasul and a Nabi. Nabi and a Rasul. He was not allowed to be harsh to Fir'aun, though Fir'aun was a genocidal killer, a baby killer, a thief, the most arrogant beast that walked this earth. Even he was not allowed to be harsh to him. By what authority do we have to be harsh to each other? This is what resonates to me in my soul as Islam. So whenever I turn to prayer and I pray to Allah, oh Allah, bring peace, Rabbin surni ala al-qawm al-mufsidin, help us in a community of troublemakers. Allah says, what are you doing to prepare that? And I honestly believe it starts at the grassroots levels. See, I believe it's all about myself. And I want to extend this self to the community. Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. O you who believe, take care of yourselves. Here, anfusakum has many meanings. If I take it at a community level, it's also anfusakum. We as a community, ummatan wahida. You are one community. Allah says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ. Indeed, the believers are brethren. Make peace between yourselves. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ. Be God conscious. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. More mercy comes your way. I believe it starts with us. I'm a strong proponent of self-liability, holding myself liable to myself in front of a mirror and says 60% of the problem that I face in my life, it's probably caused by me. I have a 60-40 rule. Anytime I have a problem, even at the camp, even at WISE, any project, I take a 60% rule for myself. I must have been 60% the cause of this. And then I go 70, 80, or I go backwards. But I start with 60. I am guilty first. Because if I am careful, and I'm proactive, and I'm vigilant, and I'm efficient, there is no way I will allow these things to happen. You know, they say even a rapist, even a mugger, even a thief, does not steal any random house. They look for homes that give them the least resistance. The mugger looks for the one who he can mug the easiest, because no one wants resistance. Now, if I send the message to my enemy that I am a sitting duck, please come, shoot me. Sure, you're gonna get it, Murphy's Law. Don't you agree? So I believe we as Muslims, particularly, first and foremost, must not have this learned helplessness mentality that we're second-class citizens. Unacceptable. Our tacit silence should not be ever seen by anybody. We should be vigilant to inform the rest of the world subliminally, if necessary, that were you to violate, I will take preemptive measures to either prevent you or to hold you liable for that deed. Now see how the enemy will think twice before they strike us. But today, drones are dropping on our nations. The very leaders are shaking hands with the very people pressing the buttons, dropping the drones on us. And they're all laughing at the banks. As you see, you guys want it. Your own leaders want it. Your own puppets. These leaders are not real leaders. These are puppets. But what are we doing? Now you might say, well, brother, that's a holistic, universal, global political problem. I'm not a global, international politician to solve the problems. I'm telling us all, it all starts with the self. Alaykum anfusakum. Take care of yourself. Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nar. Save yourselves and your family from the fire of hell. You and I are liable. So while we get together here, it's wonderful that a group of various cultures get together. And we have many, many struggles. Let me explain one struggle. Our older generations that came from the East, and I say East, from the countries that we typically come from. I come from Africa. Our forefathers came with a very traditional mindset. Iraqis have come, Afghanis have come, Iranians have come, Pakistanis have come. They've established themselves within the communities and brought the cultures that they had, because it's logical. If I was to move to Alaska, I'm going to bring my cultures, because that's what gives me that resonance, that I know who I am. It's okay. But what ends up happening is that while we establish the institutions, our forefathers, with due respect to them, many of them received religion from their forefathers without validations. Most of the times they did not validate religion. It was told upon them, this is how it's done, this is how you're going to live, this is how you're going to die. The new generation doesn't accept those principles. The new generation, especially with the revolution of media and with the access to the universal messages around the world community, the youth, is beginning to see itself as a global village. It's no longer necessarily seeing itself exclusively Khoja, exclusively Pakistani, exclusively Afghani or whatever. No. They start to interact socially because we're in a very cosmopolitan community, a plethora of communities. In class, I have all nations and cultures next to me. And I'm starting to resonate with them. And I'm beginning to see that they're no different than I am. Sure, my food is a little bit different, and some of the traditions that I do are a little bit different. But at the end of the day, we are all one and the same human beings, and we all have the same basic universal principle. Which then leads two people to want to get together and potentially get married. Now the old generation steps in and says, no, haram. Astaghfirullah. We will taint the blood. How dare you do that? Now I often think about it, says, you know, partly they're right. When the old generation steps in, I don't blame them. Because they're basically saying to the child, listen, this is uncharted territory. You may be intrigued by somebody else's culture, but how do you know you can handle it in a marital situation? Because it's a 24/7 ordeal, and it's not that simple that you meet somebody in class, shake hands, you share a few cultural things, go out, eat a couple of different meals, and then you go home. No, this is a 24/7, and when children come, you have to decide which culture you're going to raise them in, and you don't want to confuse them, you want to give them a sense of identity. So now, have we not blurred identity by bringing in two cultures into a child? True. But let's look at the bigger picture. Isn't it wonderful if a child can be multicultural? Isn't it fantastic that they can take on different colors at any time and they feel empowered that yes, my one father comes from Africa, the other one comes from Asia, this one comes from... Isn't that beautiful? The problem is we can't handle it. We're not designed to handle it. And this is where the message comes in, that let's work to get out of that box once in a while. Because as I mentioned before, living in Canada, living in America is a different culture. Though I may be a staunch Iranian, speaking pure Farsi, trust me, I am different from an Iranian. I know me, I am different as an East African living in America. I'm very different from an East African living in East Africa. Though my culture is there, I was born there, I was raised there as a child. But I am different, my vision is different, my styles are different, my methodologies are different. I've added on to the plethora of my abilities. Isn't that wonderful? Whoever said that I should limit that, which wisdom will tell you that no, limit it, don't expand your horizons, don't interact with other cultures. God forbid, don't adapt or adopt such cultures. This is why I love Islam. You know what I love? As Sister Shahraz nicely mentioned, thank you, but honestly, to me, the greatest power I feel when I come, even at the camp, when I see an international community, people ask me, which community comes to your camp? I said, all communities. Oh, but what about my community? I said, they're there too. How many? I said, what is the difference? It's not quantity, it's quality. There could be one of you. Who cares? You're a Muslim. That's what counts. We respect your culture. But isn't it wonderful that we've all come under one circle? And this is happening now in the new generation. The new generation is moving towards amalgamation of cultures, which is becoming not a... And I don't promote monolithic cultures, by the way. I don't. Quran even says, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرْ. Travel, go see how the world has fared. Go see them. I notice people who travel tend to be more broad-minded. I could have gone to China, see the Chinese culture, never adopted the Chinese culture, but I'm aware of it. It makes me wiser than a person who's never left his own town. So I think it's wonderful that in this gathering that all of you are here, that let's make the best of it. And I really admire when I see people of various cultures sitting together, friendship, they're traveling together, talking to each other. To me, that's Islam in practice. Look at the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Notice how he was multicultural. He even married outside his culture. Our Imams were well known to marry outside the culture. Our Imams did not remain within the culture. The only Imam that was married within the family was Imam Zain al-Abidin. Why is that? Because you find that cross-culturalism of expansion is very healthy, and our ability to manage it is what brings diversity. But look, even if we were to study genetics in molecular science, all human beings come from one mother. There is a research study done called the mitochondrial Eve study, which shows that the mitochondria contains the matrilineal genetic matter. So mother is the only contributor to the mitochondria of a child. And when they've done research to show that the whole human race actually comes from one woman. Now, what does Allah say? Allah says, we created you from one nation, from one group of people, and then we diversified you. And that diversity is a lovely expression of Allah's beauty in His creation. He says, if you were all of one culture, it would be a dull world. It's a lovely culture that you have varieties. I know I love when I travel, and one problem I have is whenever I travel to a country, I fall in love with that country. I feel like I want to live there. I want to be like the people. If I travel in Africa, I want to be with the Africans. If I'm in Asia, I want to be with the Asians. I'm in Europe, I want to be with the Europeans. You know, I love it because I fall in love with it. Now, it's a temporal love, of course, you know, because it's long-term, you start to see different things. But at that moment, you fall in love with that culture, and Allah says, look at this one, look at that variety. You come home, you try to adapt certain cultural things that they practice that are very practical. You say, you know what, I'd like to do that too. For example, when I was in Iran, one culture I really love, which I think is a very beautiful culture, is you find Iranians, when they're traveling on the highway, they'll stop, they'll open the dastarkhan, and you know, the whole family will sit by the highway. You know, the fumes are passing by with the diesel. They're busy sipping their tea, eating their chilo kebab. You know, or you go about the roundabouts, you know. See, all the roundabouts are filled with families sitting. I said, you know, that's gold. I said, our nuclear families are breaking up in other parts of the world. But look how that nuclear family has been maintained. That just by sitting around the dastarkhan, eating together, breaking bread together, is a bonding agency that brings the family together and it makes them love each other as a family. I think that's missing in other parts of the world. That's a culture I would love to institute if I had that power within my community. That all of us should get together as family members and sit and eat together. That even when you travel, stop on the highway, lay out the carpet, sit on it, and just enjoy and bask in the beauty of the creation of Allah. We don't realize that power, that few moments is critical. Take a typical teenager today, when mother and father want to go out, the son gets a message from his other friend to say, the club is on tonight, right? Next thing, he's got no time. Next thing, he's got no time for his parents, and the parents hardly see the son. The son is disconnected, there's no family connection, and the next thing, even spiritually, they're disconnected. Parents are getting devastated because their children are not following them. Just simple situations, simple. It appears very benign, innocuous as we call it, but it is intensely powerful. That this little gathering, and this is an Islamic adab, this is an Islamic akhlaq that we must institute. Culturals. But look, when you study these cultures and say, mashallah, that's a beautiful culture. That's a lovely thing to have. You know, those kinds of things, that spirit that the community holds, I think is extremely essential. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I have a quick message, a couple of quick messages, and then I will conclude. So bear with me, please. Our communities right now, Islam is the #1 agenda on earth, politically, socially. You turn on any media, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, any newspaper, I dare you to find a single newspaper in a day that does not have an Islamic issue or Islamic country issue. Every newspaper is filled with these issues. Islam is the agenda #1. And the enemy is trying to divide us. Without a doubt, sectarianism, especially between Sunni and Shia, is something that the British have used, and even their predecessors have used very effectively to control societies and to enslave them. When the Quran is giving me the prescription, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, hold on to the rope of Allah and do not differentiate, do not deviate, do not create parties. What is Hablillah? Hablillah, by the Quranic principles, is Allah. The Quran, Rasulillah. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصَّادِقُونَ. The believers are the ones who believe in Allah, the Messenger, then they don't doubt and they struggle with themselves and their wealth. These are the truthful ones. That's the Hablillah. So when I talk to my brethren of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, I said our unity lies in Rasulillah. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. No one, even as a lover of Ahl al-Bayt, that I will talk about all the 12 Imams, in particular Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they're more spoken of, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. I said I will talk till I turn blue, but no one is more important in my conversation than the Holy Prophet. Why do I say that? Ask Imam Ali. Read the whole Nahj al-Balagha, even his last will before his departure. He says to Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, he says, my sons, make sure you uphold the rope of Allah and maintain your submission to Allah and obey the Messenger of God. This is the Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Imam of the time, who's now giving that exhortation to the next Imam, that make sure you maintain your connection with God and the Prophet. That's the central axis of Deen of Islam. Today we have among our Shias pointing fingers at Sunnis. We have Sunnis pointing fingers at Shias, each side damning. Unfortunately, one side being more harsh than the other sometimes. That with guns they go and behead and they butcher. Look what's happening in Syria today. There's plenty of evidence to show that the Messenger 14 centuries ago saying that my community will be beaten up like this, where the enemies will divide us, and they will cause dispute not only between Sunni and Shia, even within the Shia, that today people ask you, what marja do you follow? My marja is better than your marja. How dare you follow that marja? That marja is not even a Muslim. Astaghfirullah. I had a brother who says, I can't eat your food. He's saying to another brother, you're najis. I said, are you serious? He says, yes, this marja is kafir, and this kafir means all his a'mal is... I said, MashaAllah, thank God, God is the master of the day of judgment. Because if you were the master of the day of judgment, we'd all be doomed. We love to be condescending and judgmental and to send these quick judgments. Everybody should go to hell except me. So, is this in Islam? No, never. I challenge this in public. I said, I dare anybody to bring me one sunnah of Ahlul Bayt that teaches us to be sectarian and to be divisive. I dare you, bring it. Imam Ali alayhi salam was a master of unity. There was no greater, considering that his right was taken. He was abused. In the khutbah of Shaykh cases, like a bone stuck in my throat for 23 years. Yes, we know that. So what are we going to do about it? Because the enemy says, that's right. Pick up the gun and go kill that Sunni. Or go kill that Shia. Like that Egyptian scholar who became a full of Ahlul Bayt. They went in and butchered him in Egypt. And dragged him in his body. What a learned man from Al-Azhar. A great scholar. To show you the myopic minds of the ignorant jahil individuals, the khawarij of our days, that go around with guns and they behead even great scholars and then they drag them on the streets only because they love Ahlul Bayt. Love of Ahlul Bayt, for everybody's information, I don't care what school of thought anybody belongs to in Islam, is fundamental that if you do not love Ahlul Bayt, you are not a Muslim. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Our obligation, brothers and sisters, in unity, that while we're uniting culturally, while we're uniting religiously, economically, we have to be wise not to allow such schisms to take place. I know when I was speaking once at the University of Maryland, I was interviewed on radio, the GOP was interviewing me, you know, these Republican parties were interviewing me, and this was just when Iraq was invaded. And they said, you see, we need to go in there and manage your differences between the Sunni and the Shia, because you will kill each other. I said, oh, where have you been? I said, since you guys came, all hell let loose. I said, as a monster Saddam was, there wasn't as much carnage as this is being done. I said, this is called controlled chaos. I said, there is strategic bombing taking place to divide us. One day the Sunni gets blown up, the next day the Shia gets blown up, with the hope that they will kill each other so that we can rob their oil and control them. I said, we're not that foolish. 14 centuries, we know how to manage our differences. We have 5 major schools of thought. We know how to articulate it. I said, you have hundreds of denominations in Christianity. God forbid I, as a Muslim, come and instigate between yourselves. I said, that's not proper ethics. That's very un-Christian-like. I said, that's very unethical. That's very un-Jesus-like. So he backed off. He tried. No, but the Sunnis. I said, no. He says, we know you're a Shia. I said, I'm a Muslim. Understand that. My principles follow the protocols of the Quran. You want to brand me as a Shia? For what reason? You don't even know the difference between Sunni and Shia. What are you trying to brand me for? But you notice how they try? They try very hard for me to say something negative. I said, I won't do that. When I sit with Christians having discussions with them, my Sunni brothers, my Shia brothers, we're all sitting together. We're having discussion with Christians. Are we not united on unity for oneness of God? Isn't it wonderful that after we have the debate, I said to my brothers, the other schools of thought, did you notice how united we were when we were meeting our Christian brethren? They said, yes. I said, why can't we unite this way and speak logically and rationally with each other? That yes, we have difference of opinion, but we're not going to kill each other. We're going to respect each other. And if you want to pray with your hands folded, then pray with your hands folded, because that's your prerogative. And on Judgment Day, Allah will question you, not me. يَوْمَ نَدْعُو كُلَّ أُنَاسٍ بِإِمَامِهِمْ. On that day, everybody will be raised with the Imam. You want to follow that Imam? Ahlan wa sahlan. Do we decide? Look what's happening today. I go on the internet, we got groups, one side bashing the other, damning the other. The enemy is sitting and laughing. He says, good. That's the guy we're going to send some nice check to. Donation. Keep doing this. We like you. Let's be wise and say, no. My Prophet has told me that no matter what school of thought, we're going to be united. So let me conclude today for Ghadir. This event of Eid al-Ghadir is pivotal in Islam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lays it out in the Quran very, very eloquently to tell us that the message of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in its fullest form came when the appointment of the successor of the messenger, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu took place. So let me explain. As you know, this is a brief history, but I want us to understand, it's not about Sunni or Shia. It's about obedience to Allah and His Prophet. This event of Ghadir is mutawatir. Mutawatir means the chain has no dispute from all 5 schools of thought. No scholar in Islam dares to challenge this event. This is not an inconsequential event. Sure, the enemies would love to belittle it and to demean it and to bring down its importance and efficacy, but we understand it very clearly that this was pivotal in establishing peace and tranquility. And if people would have listened to that, the Muawiyahs, the Yazids, the Khawarij, these Salafis today, Al-Qaeda, all these different groups that are Taliban groups that are killing and butchering, these are the modern day Khawarij. The Khawarij of Muawiyah that were created in the Battle of Siffin, these are the modern days. And the Muawiyahs are the ones sitting on thrones, calling themselves Khadim al-Haramain. See? Buying billion-dollar jets, throwing money in casinos like night and day. These are the Muawiyahs of today. They're the financiers of all the satanic. And then there's a puppeteer above them telling them which buttons to press. We see it. We know it. We're not foolish. What do we do about it? You know, we cry every Muharram. Ya laytani kunna ma'akum. Oh, we wish we could be with you, Imam Hussein. Imam says, you are with me. Karbala is here. You are being butchered today. In fact, there are more people being butchered today than ever in history before. What are you doing about it? The enemy is striking you just like what was happening in Karbala. The enemy is being very mechanical in its killing machines. What are you doing? I say alaykum anfusakum. I'm the problem. I feel I'm the problem. Unless I take steps, at least within my 5 friends that I have, and to amalgamate them as my brothers, Allah will say, you haven't done anything. Allah does not ask me to take the whole world and unite it. But whenever you look even at the messenger himself, how did his mission start? There were only 3 people when he started. In public, it was him, Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was a young boy, and his wife Khadija alayhi salam. These 3 were praying. Now you might see Mecca, it's the bastion of polytheism. It's rich with this idolatry. It's like the world today when we see some nations that have all kinds of armaments and they're so entrenched in their ways. You would say, how would we change the mindset of such people when they're so entrenched for 1,000 years in this satanic lifestyle? The Prophet says it starts slowly. We might say, oh, but that was the Prophet, he was getting guidance from Allah. Why? We're not getting guidance from Allah? Then what is the Quran for? Then what is the Prophet for? What are the Ahlul Bayt for? What did they come for? For us to praise them, put them on a mantelpiece every Muharram, and polish them, and then put them back in boxes and push them away into some closet? No. Their guidance is constant. I beg to differ. Their guidance is constant. Unfortunately, we don't practice it. We give lip service to religion, and I'm pointing this to myself, that when it comes to true practice of Ahlul Bayt, we give lip service, we don't practice it. We just want to cry, we want to beat ourselves, we want to feel the pain of the Imam. We don't want to take that step, because taking that step is the hardest part. So if I could simply shed tears and show some love to it, hopefully I'll put my foot in paradise and maybe I'll get in. It doesn't work that way. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. Who can intercede on Allah's behalf except by His permission? Who can come in? You and I can dare to say, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسَ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Can the believers dare to say that they believe and not be tested? What is our test? Honestly, brothers and sisters, we're living in Canada, we're living in America. We have a golden opportunity to represent Islam eloquently, beautifully, and we become agencies of unity. Yes, we recognize our differences, but we are agents of unity. So let me conclude on Ghadir, please, and bear with me. I know that I still have some time, but I want to touch on this very carefully. Today, notice the world is killing each other, especially in the Middle East, between these two major schools. What's the root of that? Go back. One group holds a particular group to be their leaders, and the other group holds the other group to be their leaders. Bottom line, we have to ask as Muslims that the purity of Islam is only maintained when you and I get instructions only from Allah and His Messenger. Not from a people, not from a shura, not from a saqifa. Nobody. Only from Allah and His Prophet. That is a principle we must hold. When people ask me that question, I said, I don't mind following anybody. If God commanded it, my Prophet commanded it, who am I to argue? النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم. The Prophet has greater right over me than I have over myself. Although this verse says, for all the Muslims. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the Prophet was leaving Mecca, the last Hajj, 10th year after Hijrah, around the 9th, 10th year after Hijrah, you find Allah stops him and gives him a command. Ya ayyuhar rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik. Wa in lam taf'al, fama ballaghta risalata. Wallahu ya'simuka minan nas. This is pivotal. I'm addressing the Muslim Ummah here at a spiritual level, at an obligation level. I truly believe that the reason why Muslims are being beaten up is because we forgot Allah, we forgot the Messenger. I can cite 100 examples, practical examples to this reality. One quick one. In the Battle of Uhud, didn't the Prophet command the archers? You all know the story of the Battle of Uhud, which was the second battle that was fought. You find he commanded archers to remain on that hill. Every time I go to Medina, I go to Uhud, I stand there and I cry and I look at that hill. I stand at the base and I can feel the army fighting. And what leaves me all the time, every time I go there, I've been to Medina maybe 7 times. Every time I stand there, I feel that command of the Prophet. Don't abandon your position. I'm in America. I have a position. You're in Canada. You have a position. Don't abandon it. You abandon it, you'll get whipped. The archers were winning because Islam is the religion of peace and success. In Yasurukum Allah, fala ghaliba lakum. When God helps you, who's going to defeat you? But then they saw wealth. The enemy was running. They dropped all their shields. They dropped all their wealth. They ran. The archers said, we want to share in it. Allah says, watch the lesson. See the greed? أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرِ. You got distracted with that wealth. We all get distracted in this part of the world. Everywhere. We're Muslims. Yes, but the wealth is too distracting. My ego is too distracting. My power, my authority. Allah says, no. You keep me and your Prophet in mind. No, I forgot you. Allah says, get ready to get whipped. It's exactly what happened. The archers left their position. Khalid bin Walid came from the back and smote them. And what happened? The Prophet's tooth was broken. Moral? What's the moral of the story? You turn your face away from the commands of the Prophet, the enemy will strike you. I believe the Muslim Ummah many a times has paid attention on the wrong things, and hence the enemy has taken advantage of us. But if we Muslims concentrated on Allah and the Prophet, and united our forces at that level, honestly, much of our differences would have been reconciled. You find in both schools of thought, we've put so much emphasis on the predecessors. Although Ahlul Bayt are extremely important. But why are they there if not to take me back to the Prophet? If I don't go back to the Prophet, then why are we there? Why are they there? Why are we adding more to what is central to the axis of deen? I remember one time I gave a speech, in my entire lecture I was praising the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the fadila of Rasulullah ﷺ, and a man comes to me and says, brother, are you feeling okay? I said, yeah. He says, you didn't mention Imam Ali ﷺ. I said, really? He says, yeah, I mean, you're sure you're a follower of Ali Bayt? I said, why, you have to mention him? I said, there are times, I know there are scholars who speak who don't even mention the Prophet at all, so they cease to be Muslims. I said, at the end of the day, what are we mentioning if not the Prophet? Show me where in the Quran Allah says not to. So look at the myopic vision that we have in our communities, and I see on the other schools of thought, Qala Fulan bin Fulan, Qala Fulan bin Fulan. Who's this one? Who authorized this one? It doesn't matter. We've been hearing it for centuries, you know? So we made them important. Same problem. When we forget the axis of deen, this is when we start breaking up with each other, and then we become a different religion. So please, our message here, unite. So Allah is saying to the Prophet, O Messenger, deliver what has been given to you. بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ, from your Lord. And if you don't do it, you have not delivered anything. So look at the axis, and I want you to understand, in the geopolitical world today, I understand this thoroughly, to the degree that I understand, even as a Muslim, when I have dialogue with other schools of thought, I have dialogue with Christian, Jews, doesn't matter. I know deep down the axis of religion. Honestly, I question the integrity through the axis. Here, Quran is laying out an axis. That's why this Eid al-Ghadir is so important. It lays the complete foundation, and the gate to the city of knowledge is placed. Balligh, deliver. Deliver what? Quran was almost all revealed. The Kaaba was purified. Fasting was already instituted. Prayer was already instituted. Everything was done. What is بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ فَمَا بَلَّغْتَ? And if you don't do it, you haven't delivered. What is it that is so important that if he doesn't do this, he wipes prayer, he wipes fasting, he wipes the purity of the Kaaba, he wipes everything? Yeah. The echoes of that is the hell on earth today. Now I understand. I understand why Allah is saying, وَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ فَمَا بَلَّغْتَ رِسَالَتَهُ وَاللَّهُ يَحْسِبُكَ مِنَ النَّاسِ. God will protect you from mankind. Because mankind says, God, give me a religion, but don't close the gate. Let me come in and add my little embellishments in it. Let me decorate it for you, God. I'll decorate it for you. You give me the structure, let me decorate it for you. Allah says, قُلَ تُعَلِّمُونَ اللَّهَ بِدِينِكُمْ. You're teaching God your religion. So this, the Prophet stops, as you know, calls the people. 100,000 people, they say. He puts saddles. And then the Prophet asks the people, don't I have more authority over you than you have over yourselves? He asked the people, look at the question. Here the principles of wilayah come into place. Don't I have more authority over you? They said, without a doubt. You are our Prophet. Your authority is greater than, you know, if I want something and you tell me not to have it, then it's forbidden for me to have it. Just think about that power. So the Prophet says then, he takes the hand of Ali ibn Abi Talib and raises him, puts his hand up and says, Man kuntum mawla, whoever I am the master of, fahada aliyun mawla. Whoever I'm the master, this Ali is his master. By the way, all schools of thought agree with this. They interpret mawla as friend. Come on. My Prophet was much wiser than that. He doesn't need to tell anybody in the middle of a desert after a very arduous Hajj, in a very hot situation, and to stack a whole series of saddles to tell the world that whoever I am the friend is the friend of Ali. This is insulting. Although Mawla, Walaya also means friendship, but not here. This is authority. Proof, Prophet asks, don't I have more authority over you than you have over yourselves? This is the event of Ghadir. The Prophet looks up, he says, Allahumma wali man wala, wa'adi man ahda, wansur man nasara, waqtul man khalala. Prophet prays in front of people. He says, be the friend of the one who's a friend of him. Be the enemy of the one who's the enemy of this one. Okay? Why is the Prophet saying this? Because Imam Ali alayhi salam becomes the axis, he becomes the conduit of the reflection of the Prophet. You take Imam Ali alayhi salam out of the picture, we've got serious problems. And I believe that despite the rejection of Imam's wilaya, the Imams were effective even though they were prevented from holding position. Imam Ali alayhi salam strategically say, this nascent deen is in my hand. That though it is being ruled by others, I will protect it to ensure it reaches its goal. I truly believe the reason we have an intact Islam today, that is the fastest growing religion in the world. Islam, number one. By the way, that's the reason, one of the reasons why it is the hottest subject on earth. It is statistically shown to be growing rapidly, and they're all terrified about it. But what they fail to understand is whether you leave it alone or you attack it, you're going to cause it to grow. Whether you like it or not, truth is going to prevail. I love hearing this sentence. But I ask the question to myself, what am I doing while it's growing? How much have I participated to press the buttons to be part of this growth? Today we're living in a very unique world. YouTube, you have seen some brothers, Brother Hadi right here, puts up some of his videos, right? He's got some videos, movies that he makes. Look at the power of YouTube. You can now become a celebrity overnight. Islam, I'm receiving emails from Korea, from China, all the way from Nigeria, from Russia, from Indonesia. Never heard of such people. They say, we're listening to your lectures. What's the power? Allah says, look at the uniqueness that you have in the world today. You have a golden opportunity to change lives. I had a young Indonesian boy calling me from the farm. He says, my parents are poor, but I raised enough money to pick up this phone to call you. I just want to let you know, I resonate Ahlul Bayt. I came from the school of Hassanain Rajabali, but I love Ahlul Bayt so much, I'm resonating in that direction. I wanted to call you to let you know. I had tears coming out of my eyes as he's talking to me. I hung up the phone, I said, SubhanAllah, Indonesia, of all the places, he's calling me, how did you get my number? The effort of a person. Allah is saying, look at the world you have today. Today we have our sisters and brothers coming on Twitter, on Instagrams, on Facebook, displaying unethical visions of each other. Click here if you think I'm cute. Right? Mahajaba sister. No hijab. Why? Because I don't show off who's going to marry me. Like as if we're products for sale. You know, like here, you know, put yourself on eBay. You know, how much do you want to bid? How absurd is that mentality? Why don't we take the front lines and put ourselves in that respectful way? So this, by the way, when Imam Ali alayhi salam, the perfection of deen, and I'm bringing these two together, that the imamate that has come in, that has protected the city of knowledge, is what you and I hold. We who are the followers of Ahlul Bayt, in my opinion, and I'm very public and vocal about this, I believe the completeness of deen is here. If you ignore this, you have deen, but you don't have it complete. You're there, but you haven't hit the mark. I'm not claiming that we have hit the mark. I'm saying we have it. We need to hit the mark with what we have. That after Imam Ali alayhi salam was appointed, Jibreel comes down and says, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. Today we have completed and perfected for you your religion called Al-Islam. And the enemies were very sad because that day the gate went into the city and the Prophet says, أنا مدينة العلم وعلي بابها ومن أراد المدينة فليأتها من بابها. I am the city, Ali is the gate. Whoever wants to come to the city, better come through the gate. What I'm trying to say is, Alhamdulillah, even our brothers of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, many of them cannot avoid but to come through the gate of Ali ibn Abi Talib, because he's the one, even ultimately, who guided and protected the first three Khalifas. They themselves, by their own mouth, they say, Lawla Ali, lahalak Umar. Had it not been for Ali, Umar would have been destroyed. Imam Ali played that role to show us a message that 14 centuries later, your obligation is no different than his. That while you're living in Canada or in America, your obligation is to be a uniting force, to bring forth the power of Islam, and don't allow Islam to be divided and to be sectarian, and let us not be nationalistic within ourselves. That if our children want to marry other nations, I know some parents block them. validate. Quran says, "Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum." The most honorable to Allah is one who's God conscious, not one who's with a certain skin color or with a certain economics or certain nationality or east or west. No. Quran says, conscious of God. A father and a mother, I recommend, please, for the love of Allah, it's going to happen. You and I are fighting an uphill battle. 20 years from now, this discussion won't even be taking place. Because it will be so common and norm for one culture to marry another culture, you and I would have no conversations in this matter. I'm simply saying it from an ethnography point of view. We're moving in that direction. But while we're here now, as parents, if our child wants to marry outside of the culture, don't say that I will not allow you to marry a child from that culture. Rather say, how pious is this boy or is this girl? How good is the family? How God conscious are they? Doesn't matter what culture they come from. These are fundamental questions. Tertiary, quaternary question you want to ask about culture, go ahead and ask. But primary question should not be at the level of that. Please, I advise us all. This is what brings unity in Islam. This is what brings harmony in Islam. This is what brings love and compassion within our ummah. So I want to conclude on that. May Allah give us the tawfiq, inshallah, to continue to unite. But I ask these brothers from Al-Huda, from Mahdi, from the Afghan community, when we united, you know, there are many communities here still that are not represented here. But this is a golden effort you've done. I laud it. When my sister Atifa called me, I said, I'm extremely busy. I have zero time. I'm literally in Texas. I'm going to have to drop everything, fly, and I drove from Dallas to Texas, to Houston, just to catch the 8 o'clock flight in the morning. Why did I come? Because when she told me we've got 3 communities coming together to unite in the message, I loved it. I said, I'll walk there if I have to. I love these kinds of things. But let's not keep them just as gatherings. Let's put some action in motion. How? Have programs together. Have some kind of a fund to help students educate through these methods. Bring some kind of social structure together. Every once in a while work in unity. Like a Muharram program, I understand you want to do a Muharram program where all the 3 groups get together and invite an English speaker from somewhere in the world besides myself to come and speak. Bring unity into the community, and we do dhikr of Imam Hussein together as evidence to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that yes, we're different in our cultures. We have our ways, we have our language, we have our slang, we have our culture, the way we talk, but we're still united in the ummah. And that's why I love when I hug my brothers, I feel that unity. I look at each person, I say, I don't care what culture you come from. You're a Muslim, you're a creation of Allah. And I always say, I've never seen an ugly person. In my life, I travel around the world. I have never met an ugly person. Ugly people are arrogant people. Ugly people are liars. Ugly people are harmful people. The human race in general is not ugly. So let's bask in it. Let's bring something positive forward. And I really, really hope. Look, I'm here. I'm honored. I know many of you here. I'm so happy to see you. You're part of our programs in Michigan. We want to bring a camp here into Canada. We're planning to open a WISE facility in Canada, a few facilities. To me, it's not about WISE or about the camp. To me, it's about creating conduits of connections, education, raising the standards of our kids. I want our kids to enter the best schools in the country, to make the best salaries, to have the best akhlaq, to know how to talk in public, to represent Islam properly, to be guided well. That to me will be a great accomplishment, and I think we're on the right footing. May Allah bless you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma inna narghabu ilayka fi dawlatin karima tu'izzu biha al-Islam wa ahla wa tudhillu biha an-nifaq wa ahla wa taj'alna fiha min ad-du'ati ila ta'atik wal qadati ila sabilik wa tarzuqna biha karamat ad-dunya wal akhirah wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalamu alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
This is the day of Eid. Let us rejoice indeed, for this is the day of La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Alayhi salatullah, alayhi salatullah. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Alayhi salatullah, alayhi salatullah. Bright colors fill the streets, their faces full of laughter, their pockets full of sweets. Let us rejoice indeed. This is the day of Eid. Let us rejoice indeed, for this is the day of
La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Alayhi salatullah, alayhi salatullah. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Alayhi salatullah, alayhi salatullah.
Mosques are full of worshippers in prostrate and need their Lord. They remember His name, they repeat. Their hands are raised to the sky, they supplicate and plead. On this blessed day, forgive us, they entreat. Let us rejoice indeed. This is the day of Eid. Let us rejoice indeed, for this is the day of Eid.